Good morning, everybody. My name's Steve Rowley. I'm one of the channel development managers here at VanillaIP, and thank you very much for joining us on this webinar on this very hot day. I do hope that you're all keeping cool. Before we start talking about Microsoft Teams calling, we thought it would be a good idea if we just quickly introduced you to DRD and VanillaIP, in case some of you weren't exactly familiar with who we were. So DRD stands for David Robert Dadds, who founded the company in 1986, and Dave is still our MD. We started selling BroadSoft in 2003. We've got 20 or so UK-based staff, but out in India, employed by DRD India, which was founded in 2010, we've got 140 developers stroke back office staff, and they're predominantly involved in maintaining and developing UBOS, which we'll talk about in just a moment. And on the VanillaIP platform, we've got about 45,000 seats. So what is UBOS? You've heard me mention that already. VanillaIP partners use UBOS to design, provision, bill, report on the solutions that they sell to their customers. And the clever thing about UBOS is that it allows our partners to incorporate elements that they don't buy from us within UBOS. So you can use UBOS to provision and build stuff that you buy from other people. That could be on a one-off basis, so it could be a piece of hardware, or it could indeed be something that you build monthly, like a subscription to a Microsoft product, something along those lines. But UBOS, as you'll see in just a moment, sit at the center of everything that we do. It's real time, as automated as we can possibly make it, and it's something that as in the UK marketplace you cannot get from anywhere else. The thing that we like to give to our partners is the ability to be different. And why is different important? Well, if you're the same as the competition, you can only really win by being cheaper. We would give you a real ability to be different because we do not do one size fits all. We do not offer you pre-built VoIP bundles that you simply rebrand and add a markup onto. In fact, we don't really do hosted voice at all. What we do is we give the ability of our partners the ability to match the technology to the people and processes within the businesses that you are trying to sell to, so that you can increase productivity, well-being, but reduce wasted time, wasted money, and also improve your customers' carbon emissions. And we do that by offering you a range of best of breed apps. So these are the best of breed apps. So you'll see that at the center of this is UBOS, and around the center of UBOS are all of the apps that we sell. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about this later in the webinar, but let's focus on one of the apps, Microsoft Teams Calling, which obviously is the subject of today's webinar. So what is Microsoft Teams Calling? Well, Microsoft Teams Calling gives you the ability to attach our fully featured cloud PBX to Teams. So effectively, the user does not have to have a separate phone system and Teams. They can just use Teams as their phone system. The key point is that this is a native Teams experience. So somebody who is very, very familiar with Teams will not find their user experience changed in any way. The only difference they will notice is when they click on the calls icon on the left-hand side of the Teams window, up pops a dial pad, which obviously the customer would use to dial out to the PSTN. That is the only difference. Let's look at the market. Well, there are 270 million Teams users globally, of which obviously there are a fair old chunk in the UK. Now, of those 270 million globally, only 27 million have actually attached some sort of phone system to Teams. So there's clearly an awful lot of users still to go who still to add a phone system to Teams. Now, of those 27 million, 13% are either using Microsoft calling plans or Operator Connect. So this is what Microsoft offer themselves, and it gives very, well, I won't say very, but it gives limited PBX functionality to somebody who wants to attach your phone system to Teams. Now, 87% of those 27 million are using Direct Connect, And Direct Connect is what drives VanillaIP's Microsoft Teams calling. And this gives the user far greater, or in our case, all of our cloud PBX functionality. So quite clearly, the people who have already decided to attach a PBX functionality to Teams want that additional functionality. They do not want the cut down functionality that they would have if they only bought their PBX functionality from Teams. And the other point, which is absolutely crucial for you guys on the call, is that Direct Connect offers you the maximum margin opportunity, because as we all know, if you're selling Microsoft products, the margins sometimes are a little slim. So let's just move on to the next slide. So what's the opportunity? Now, we're calling this 1 + 1 = 1. I know that is absolutely appalling maths, but we're doing that to make a point and also attract a little bit of attention. So what we're saying is that your sales teams and your marketing teams should be targeting anybody who is already a Teams user. We've established there's 270 million of those, and ask them, why not use Teams as your phone system? So rather than using a separate phone system and Teams, just use Teams as your phone system. So you're using one piece of technology to do two jobs. That's where we're getting the 1 + 1 = 1 from. Now, by doing that, it will make Teams, which a lot of people are now relying on more and more, even more useful. It gives them the opportunity to do more with fewer apps, so it drives up productivity, and it also makes remote working so much easier. So providing that whoever is using Teams has connected their device to the internet, either by Wi-Fi or by mobile data, wherever they are, sat in their car, hotel room, customer site, working from home, they are then connected to their company's phone system and all of the functionality that they want with that. So it makes remote working so much easier. And the other point is it could well reduce costs. So even though they will be paying Microsoft a little bit more, and obviously they'll be paying you more, the more that they pay Microsoft and you, hopefully will be significantly less than the cost of maintaining a separate phone system. So let's move on to the next slide, and we're now going to go over to my lovely colleague Ed, who is going to talk about the more technical aspects of Microsoft Teams calling. Ed, over to you.
Thanks, Steve, and morning, everyone. And before we go through how you actually set this up on the UBOS platform, I'm just going to run through some base requirements that you're going to need to be actually able to use this service. So first of all, you're going to need users with a Microsoft Teams license. Now, that seems obvious, but some people it isn't always. So you need to at least have a business basic license with Microsoft to be able to use this service. That's very important. Next thing you need is either a Microsoft phone system license, a common area phone license, or an E5 license for your users. Now, that's the reason that's required is because to be able to use the Dialpad or enable the Dialpad within the app, one of those licenses is required. The next thing that's up is the 2 spare Microsoft licenses required for the initial sync. Now, you'll see shortly when we run through how you do the sync between our platform and your customer's Teams setup. They need to do an initial synchronization to pull through some users. Now, to do that, the service needs 2 spare Microsoft licenses. It could be any of the ones that we've already mentioned, or a business premium, or any of the E licenses. It just needs them for the initial sort of 15-minute setup, some domains. And then once that's done, they're not used again. So you can either reassign them somewhere else, or you can get rid of them if you don't want one. And then finally, you need some DDIs. Now, again, a bit like the Teams license, that might seem a bit obvious to most of you. However, in a lot of platforms, that a DDI is a requirement for a user or a service. On the VanillaIP platform, you can have plenty of services and users that are extension only. But for this particular service, you will need DDIs for your users. So what is Microsoft Teams calling on the VanillaIP platform? Well, we've teamed up with a company called Call to Teams to provide PSTN calling within your customer's Teams environment. As Steve mentioned earlier, it's using the direct routing solution within Microsoft Teams to allow you to get PSTN calls into the Teams app, but you need to get a way to do that. So there's been ways in the past to do it. You either have to know how to use PowerShell, you've got to have fairly sufficient or proficient users that can do that. In this case, we're teaming it up there. They've got a great solution, really integrates well with Teams, and using our UBOS platform, for customer enablement, we fully utilize the Call to Teams API to provide a simple way to set up your customers with this service. Most of the work is completed in the UBOS portal, and the end customer just needs to log into the Call to Teams portal to perform the service sync. So, like I mentioned a minute ago, there's an initial sync. When you add users or make any changes, you have to get them to do a sync, but usually it's once in a blue moon. So that's what we're doing there. We've also got two packages available to you to use, which Steve will cover off again a little bit later. But the idea is we've got a Microsoft Teams Calling 1 package, which assumes that the customer is going to be doing pretty much everything within the Teams environment. So call forwards, holding, transfer, etc. All of that will all be done within the Teams environment. We've then got Microsoft Teams Calling 2, which is the same as Teams 1, but it allows you to do call forwarding on our side, on the PBX side, so you don't have to be in the Teams environment to set that up. You can do that wherever you are, and all of that will be related through our side of the platform rather than having to go all the way to Teams to work out what to do. Also, if you've got a customer with an estate of desk phones, of physical desk phones already in use, and then they want to use the Teams calling, well, what you can do is a service in the Teams calling to pack called Share Call Appearance. And what that will allow you to do is you can use the Teams app on your mobile, your desktop, your tablet, whatever you want to use it on. But if they've got like a Polycom or a Yealink phone already on their desk, they can maintain that without having to have the other apps open. So even if, say, Teams went down, if they've got the Shared Call Appearance with Teams Calling 2 included, what they can do is actually just lift up the handset on their desk and make calls as if they were, just using it as a normal day-to-day device. So again, if you've got both open, they're all going to be ringing at the same time, so bear that in mind. But maybe if they want a physical phone in the office but not at home, that works quite well for them. So that's something that's included within the Teams Calling 2. So I'm just going to show you a quick video of how this is all set up in the UBOS platform. We'd normally do this live, but there are a couple of steps in here that can take a little while to go through. So we're just going to run you through it now.
Let's have a look at the steps to get the service up and running. The first thing we'll do is at the business level, add the new Microsoft Teams calling integration service. Add it in the same way as any other business service. Put the usual details at the top. So an instance name could be anything you want. And this is the important part. This is where you're going to enter the Microsoft 365 global admin details for the user who's going to be able to log in and complete the syncs between Call to Teams and Microsoft 365. So put in their email address, their first name and last name. You can add the first one in the service, and then you can add any additional ones later if you need to. Press save, and the first step is complete. Next step is to be completed by the customer's global admin user that we just defined in the business service. They will get an email like the one on screen from Call to Teams. They just need to click on the link. They're taken to the Call to Teams portal. They'll be prompted to log in with their Microsoft credentials. There we go. And then they just need to go to the Services tab when this page loads. Then they go to the Teams tab. Then they need to enable the sync option and press save. As soon as they do this, they'll get a new authorization window. And the first time they will get a few permission pop-ups that they must accept, and then the first sync will start, as we will see. Now, this initial sync can take up to 15 to 20 minutes to complete, and you as a UBOS administrator can go back to the business service, go to the Sync Jobs tab, and then in here you'd see any successful or any failed synchronization attempts. Step 3 is all about assigning the Microsoft Teams calling package to a user. It's the same process as you're all capable of doing now, just a few important points specific to this package type. So we're going to start the wizard, and here's the first vital change. You must set the user type to SIP. Then enter the rest of the details as you would normally. On the next screen, the primary package, you can choose any of your available Microsoft Teams calling packages. Then down to the device section, and we need to make sure that we choose the Teams integration trunk group as the primary device. Otherwise, it's not going to work. We have to choose a DDI also for this business user. Again, that's a requirement of this service. Enter the extension number. add any additional services if you need to, and then finish that, and our user is built. So there you go, pretty straightforward, and repeat that process for any other users that you want to add. The final step that needs to be completed in UBoss is to map the users in UBoss to the users in Microsoft Teams. So we're going to go back to the business service. Then we're going to go into the users tab, and you'll see two tabs here. We've got the mapped users tab and the unmapped users tab. Now the mapped users tab will show anyone that's already been mapped between the two services. In the example case here, it was a new instance, so there aren't any mapped users to show. Then the unmapped users tab will show the users that still need to be mapped in the service. In here, we have a table showing the UBoss users on the left, their VoIP number in the middle, and on the right is a drop-down list that we're pulling through from Call to Teams, all the users that has found from the sync. So in the drop-down, you can map your users together. Then we press save. We say yes. When it's complete, you'll see a message saying that it's been successfully mapped. And you'll also get another message saying that as there's been a change made, you need to notify the global admin that they should now log in and do another sync. If we go back to the mapped users page, we'll now see those users that we've just mapped listed here. So there you go. If you need to change any, so if you've mapped the wrong user, you have to select them and then press the delete button and go back through the unmapped users process again. Now, last step to complete this whole process is to let your global admin users know that they need to perform another sync. Now, you can ring them, obviously, but you can also send them an email from here. So go to the Sync Jobs tab, and you've got a Send Sync Now email. Now, what that's going to do is email out to any of the global admins that you've assigned within this service. And then they will receive an email similar to the one that you can see on the screen here, which just tells them that a change has been made to their Teams integration. They just need to log into the portal and then can perform that final sync. And once the global admin has done that, you are ready to go. The last element to run through is the Teams Dialpad. We've just gone through and set up the Microsoft Teams calling integration, so let's see it in action. Here we are in Teams, and for users that have never seen the full Teams calling before, the difference between the Calls tab in the Microsoft Teams app is that instead of just searching for an internal contact to call them, we now have the Dialpad. As you can see, I can just simply dial a number and make a call, and it dials out to that external party. There we are connected. Once I'm in the call, I can put the call on hold, and then I can resume it. I can then also perform a blind transfer. You can either dial a number or type someone's name. Select the name, hit transfer. And then I can also perform a consultative transfer. So same thing again, dial a person's number and then speak to them first, and then you can complete that transfer. If you want to conference in the app, you can do that as well. You simply click on the conference button, and then you can add team members by their name, or you can dial out to an external party as well if you want to. So we've also got a history of dialed calls on the screen here, and we can select any of these and we can call them back straight away. Expand the options. I can add them to a speed dial, or I can add them as a full contact if I want to as well. On the right hand side of the pane here, I've got quick access to speed dials. Just click on the number there to dial them. And then finally, I've also got the contacts tab here, which is a list of custom contacts that I've added via the Teams app itself, or also some of these are pulled through directly from my user's Outlook application. And I can call the contact by clicking on the call button here. So that was a run through quickly of how to add the service in the portal, do the syncs in the portal from your global admin point of view, mapping your users, and then the actual Teams Dialpad itself.
Cool. So there we go. That was a brief truncated video on how to set that up in UBoss and how it looks in the actual Teams application as well. If that was your first time seeing UBoss, I hope you enjoyed what you see and or rather what you saw. And you can see it's fairly straightforward to navigate and set things up in there. As we've shown there, easy to set up and deploy in the UBoss portal. You basically just have a business service and you add some users with the calling Teams packages. And then once you've done that, everything else is kind of done within that business service. So pretty straightforward, really. I do mention in the video that if you want to add more users, then you just repeat the process. You don't have to do it quite like that, how we did it in the video. You can actually use, we've got a fairly comprehensive bulk job stroke upload tool to build users rather than do it one by one as well. So there you go. And for my final slide here, I just wanted to cover off, and that this is being aggressively used by our current partner base. We've already got thousands of users on the Teams calling packages. And as a bit of a case study here, we've got great success story of a large 500-seat customer. They're a multinational business. They've got offices in the UK, India, Australia, so truly global. And they've got a real mix of the Teams calling as well as our HPBX users, which we call smart users. There's a real mix there, and it really highlights that you can have this sort of joint enterprise dial plan, if you will. Doesn't matter where they are or what they're using. So they can be in Teams, they can be using WebEx, they can have a desk phone, but they can all communicate with each other and their customers. I think that's the important thing to see. And this kind of breakdown we've got on the right hand side on this table, just kind of showing you the splits. You can actually see we've already also in this one customer a mix of the two Teams calling packages. So you've got some users that need a bit more than others. Then we've got that mix of smart users there as well. So the majority are on the Teams calling. But you can also see we've got the other services as well that we offer on the VanillaIP platform, such as our call center queues, applications like the Unity application, lots of other things, auto attendance. So you can set all of that up within our platform, and you're just kind of using the team side purely to almost as a device, if you will. And on that note, I'm going to pass you back to Steve.
Now, what I like about Microsoft Teams calling is that it opens doors and it initiates other conversations. Remember that we're suggesting that you track down, you identify Teams users, and you ask the question, why not use Teams as your phone system? Now, once you've got into question answering mode, if we move on to the next slide, you can then answer a whole bunch of questions that will allow you to sell all of these best of breed apps that are all provisioned and managed and reported on and billed by UBOS. Now, so this, what you see in front of us is the breadth of the VanillaIP proposition. Now, to sell all of those to one customer is clearly a good idea because it maximizes your margin opportunity and allows you to offer the customer a far more, or a very complete solution, which makes them stickier, promotes you as being trusted advisor and all that sort of stuff. But you're probably thinking, well, that's quite a complicated thing to sell. Now, it isn't really, because if we move on to the next slide, what we're suggesting is that you ask each customer the magic questions. Obviously, we already covered one magic question, and these are just a sample of the magic questions that you could ask. You no doubt want to write your own that suits your business and your customer. But the point we're making here is if you ask these magic questions to each and every customer, you will unearth the known and crucially the unknown needs within that customer for all of those best of breed apps that we saw on that wheel with UBOS at its center. And if you've got any questions or want to understand a little bit more about this, then myself and Ronka, who's my other fellow channel development manager, would be absolutely delighted to talk you through this, because this in essence is the bit that makes you different. This is the essence, this is the bit that makes you different, so you're not competing on price by just being the same as everybody else. That comes to the end of all of the content that we wanted to share with you. So Bree, what questions have you got from Ed and I to try and answer?
Is the E5 or phone system license a per user or one-off business license?
Per user, and you would get those licenses from however you get your Microsoft licenses currently, so whether that's through Microsoft or through one of their partners, or if you obviously offer them yourself, then yeah, but it's per user. And I think last time I checked, I think it was about £6 for the phone system stroke common area phone license. The E5 is their big expensive license, which basically includes everything, and included in that obviously is the phone system license. But again, just to stress, it is a per user license on the Microsoft side.
And can I just jump in with a supplementary point there? If you're talking to your customers about adding our fully featured PBX to Teams and using Teams as a phone system, when you do get down to the talking about price bit, they could think, well, blimey, if I've added a £6 license to every single user, that's starting to get quite expensive. If you reach that price objection, or before you get to there, have a little chat with myself and Romka, because we've got a couple of cunning little ways of getting around that we won't cover in this webinar, because it could start getting a bit confusing. But if a customer goes, well, yeah, absolutely, would love to add VanillaIP's Cloud PBX to Teams, but it's just too expensive, talk to us. We've got some cunning plans.
Next question is, are you seeing from across the partners that end user customers are reconsidering Teams telephony due to the cost of the solution?
I think what whoever's asking this question is driving at is that, yeah, and this could relate to the previous point that I made, it could be that for some customers, adding a PBX to Teams is more than they want to pay. As I say, if that's the scenario, then talk to myself and Romka. We can talk you through all of the other options available to them, and there are some really good options which we won't confuse matters we're talking about now. The other point is that some customers, perhaps at the beginning of the pandemic work from home period, lots of people rushed to Teams because it gave them a remote working solution, and that was absolutely fantastic. And some people did adopt Microsoft's PBX solutions. In that case, they may well have found that those can be quite expensive, and some of the commercials are quite restrictive, or the functionality that was available then and indeed is available now, although it is Microsoft are offering more functionality now than they were initially, is not quite what people want, and in which case that's where we step in. So hopefully that answers the question.
So another question is, Microsoft phone system license, that adds a lot of extra costs. 2 spare licenses on NCE is a pain. If these are not needed later, what license is needed?
Well, what you can do, I mean, yeah, I understand what they're saying there with the NCE thing that Microsoft are doing now. You can basically, if you've got some existing licenses that you've got spare, you can use them. And like I mentioned, it could be any of the ones that we mentioned earlier. It could be any of the licenses, it could be any of the business licenses. It could even just be a common area phone license, to be honest. They have to add some domains in for you. And to do that as part of the automated process, they have to build 2 users in your Teams environment. So hence it needs 2 licenses. If you can free up a couple of licenses from users, then you can do that, or you can add them on. Yeah, unfortunately, there's not really a way around that. But yeah, any licenses I mentioned, but it's just a requirement that's part of that process.
So the spare licenses that you need, can you dispense with them after the setup is complete, or do you need to retain?
Yeah, you can do. There
licenses?
are some requirements around NCE, which some of our customers here may know better than myself. But you can sometimes add stuff on and remove it within the day, but it does depend on who you're buying it from. But yeah, and again, if you've got some spare users that you can maybe remove the licenses from, you've got that option as well.
Next question, is an X amount of minutes included, or is it unlimited in the UK?
We have a range of minute bundles which can be added to Microsoft Teams calling. They run from 100 minutes up to 4,000 minutes, and they can be allocated on a per user basis.
All right, that's the end of the questions. So thank you all for joining us. And if you'd like to talk to our sales team to sign up with VanillaIP and sell with us, please do send a quick message to sales@vanillaip.com. Thank you guys, and have a great rest of your day.